Chapter 10. It looked pretty certain that the war would come. Already the gas masks were making rude noises in the streets. The men with the Anderson shelters were dumping corrugated iron sheets in back gardens. Notices about gas attacks, sirens, shelters, and what to do if were all multiplying like spots of some disease. The decay of war was spreading everywhere. The walls against which the kids played their ball games had become the notice boards of war. The rules of 4 sticks, chalked up on the wall, had been covered with the regulations for the blackout. We were being instructed in the rules of a new game. On very rare occasions, an instruction said something other than had been intended. All expectant mothers must now show their pink forms. It would have been nice to think that it had been done deliberately, but it hadn't. The infection of war was spreading through the kids. Balls were no longer things to bounce. Balls had become bombs. Cricket bats were pressed into service as machine guns. Kids with outstretched arms gyrated through imaginary skies with a rat-a-tat-tat, shooting down enemy planes or shooting up enemy soldiers. A shriek of whee! Boom! And a dozen kids died in feigned agony. Bang! You're dead! Anna held tightly to my hand and pressed herself close to me. It wasn't the kind of game that she could play. The acting and the pretending belonged to something real, and it was this reality that Anna saw so clearly. She pulled at my hand, and we went indoors and out into the garden. It wasn't much better there, for over the housetops a barrage balloon made mock of the skies. She turned a full circle, looking at these intruders in the sky. She looked me full in the face as her hand stretched out for mine. A frown flickered on her face. "Why, Finn? Why?" she asked, searching my face for an answer. I could give her no answers. Kneeling down, she gently touched a few wild flowers that grew in the backyard. Bossy arrived and rubbed his battered old head on her leg. Patch, lying full length, eyed her with concern. It must have been the best part of an hour that I stood there and watched her touch and explore these few square yards of garden. Delicately and reverently, her fingers moved from beetle to flower, from pebble to caterpillar. I was waiting for her to cry, expecting her at any moment to run to my arms. But she didn't. I wasn't at all sure what was going on in her mind. All I knew was that the hurt was deep, perhaps too deep for my comfort. Some time ago I had started to light up a fag, but I hadn't got very far. It was still unlit between my lips when I heard her say, so very quietly, "I'm sorry." She wasn't talking to me. She wasn't talking to Mr. God. She was talking to the flowers of the earth, to the earth itself, to Bossy and to Patch, and to the little bugs and beetles. Humanity asking the rest of the world for forgiveness. I was intruding here, so I went into the kitchen and swore. It struck me as curious that since knowing Anna I was swearing much more frequently. It ought to have been the other way round, but it wasn't. I grabbed the unlit fag out of my mouth. It had stuck to my lips, and it felt as if I were pulling half the skin away from my lips. It made me swear some more, but it didn't make me feel any better. I don't know how long I sat there. It seemed like forever. It was the horror of my own imagination that drove me into the garden again. My imagination had somehow provided me with a machine gun, and I was busy killing off those who had caused Anna so much hurt. Confused and bewildered at my own violent thoughts, I went out into the backyard, half afraid that in some mysterious way she had divided them. She was sitting on the garden wall with Bossy on her lap. She grinned as I approached her. Not one of those full-blooded grins, but full enough for me to slam the door on my own violence. I went back into the kitchen and put the kettle on. Soon we were both sitting on the wall drinking our cocoa. My mind was racing away with questions I wanted to ask, but I managed not to. I wanted to be assured that she was all right, but I wasn't given that assurance. I knew that she wasn't all right. I knew that the horror of the impending war had struck deep down inside her. No, she wasn't all right, but she was managing very well. For Anna, this war creeping up on us was a deep sorrow of the soul. It was me that was anxious. Later that evening, when Anna was ready for bed, I suggested she could come to bed with me if she wanted to give her some comfort, to give her protection, of course. Lord, how easy is it to fool yourself? How easy to cover up your own maggots of fear by pretending that they belong to somebody else. I knew full well that I was concerned for her, that I was aware of her distress, and that I was ready to do anything to comfort her. It was only in the middle of the night that I realised how much I needed her assistance, that she was all right, how much her sheer sanity protected me. For all her few years, I saw her then as I see her now, the sanest, most uncluttered and most direct of beings. Her ability to ignore the excesses of information, dismiss the useless frill, and uncover the heart of things were truly magical. Finn, I love you. When Anna said that, every word was shattered by the fullness of the meaning that she packed into it. Her I was a totality. Whatever this I was for Anna was packed tight with being. Like the light that didn't fray, Anna's I didn't fray either. It was pure and all in one piece. Her use of the word love was not sentimental or mushy. It was impelling and full of courage and encouragement. For Anna, love meant recognition of perfectibility in another. Anna saw a person in every part. Anna saw you. Now, that is something to experience, to be seen as you, clearly and definitely, with no parts added or hidden. Wonderful and frightening. I'd always understood that it was Mr. God who saw you so clearly and in your entirety, but then all Anna's efforts were directed to being like Mr. God. So perhaps the trick is catching if only you try hard enough. By and large, I thought I could understand Anna's attitude to Mr. God, but on one aspect I got stuck completely. Perhaps it was hidden in "Thou didst hide these things from the wise and the understanding, and didst reveal them unto babes." How she managed it, I truly didn't know, but in some manner she had scaled the wall of God's majesty, his awe-inspiring nature, and was on another side. Mr. God was a sweetie. Mr. God was fun. Mr. God was lovable. Mr. God was for Anna pretty straightforward, not presenting her with any real problem in understanding of his nature. The fact that he could, and often did, put a large spanner in the works was neither here nor there. He was perfectly free to do so, and obviously it was for some good purpose. even though we were not able to see or understand what that purpose was. Anna saw, recognised, admitted to, and submitted to all those attributes of God so often discussed. Mr. God was the author of all things, the creator of all things, omnipotent, omniscient, and the very heart of all things, except. It was this exception that Anna saw as the key to the whole thing. This exception was funny, exciting, and made Mr. God the sweetie that he was. What puzzled Anna was that nobody had seen it before. At least if they had seen it, nobody seemed willing to talk about it. It was very odd, since it was for Anna so strange a thing that only Mr. God could have thought about it. All the other qualities of Mr. God, those qualities so often talked about in church and in school, were magnificent, tremendous, and let's face it, a little frightening. Then he had gone and done this thing. It made him lovable, funny, and giddy. You could, if you wished, deny Mr. God existed, but then any denial didn't alter the fact that Mr. God was. No, Mr. God, he was the kingpin, the centre, the very heart of things, and this is where it got funny. You see, we had to recognise that he was all these things, and that meant that we were at our own centre, not God. God is our centre, and yet it was we who acknowledged that he is the centre. That makes us somehow internal to Mr. God. This is the curious nature of Mr. God, that even while he is at the centre of all things, he waits outside us and knocks to come in. It is we who open the door. Mr. God doesn't break it down and come in. No, he knocks, and then he waits. Now it takes a real super kind of God to work that one out, but that's just what he's done. As Anna said, that's very funny, that is. It made me very important, don't it? Fancy Mr. God taking second place. Anna never got involved in the problem of free will. I suppose she was too young, but she had got to the heart of the matter. Mr. God took second place. Ain't that something? It was after 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Anna had been up for a long time. She was shaking me awake with one hand and holding a cup of tea in the other. My one opened eye registered the teetering cup and the saucer in her left hand. It was more than possible that the cup would end up in the bed with me if she shook much harder. I moved across the bed to give her some more room for any emergency manoeuvre. "Desist, infant," I implored. "Cup of tea, Finn?" She plunked it down on the bed. The cup gave a last frantic twirl around the saucer and settled down. After scraping the bottom of the cup on the saucer's edge, she handed it to me. The amount of tea left at the bottom of the cup might have been enough to drown a fly or two, or at least certainly inconvenience them. I lifted up the cup and drained what was there, and was smitten on the nose by half a dozen of undissolved sugar lumps. I made a face at her. "That is tea?" I questioned. "Drink what's in the saucer then. I'll hold it for you." I'm never at my best first thing in the morning, and needed both my arms to prop myself up. I sat on the edge of the bed and braced myself, closed my eyes and opened my mouth. The saucer rattled against my back teeth as she thrust it in and tipped it up. I got about a third of the tea inside me and the rest outside. Anna giggled. "A drink I need, a wash I can wait for. Anyway, to the kitchen," and we started brewing. I pointed to the door. She went. "Finn's awake," she yelled. "He wants some more tea. He spilt that lot down his pyjamas. May you be forgiven, I muttered as I took my pyjamas